It's the signature tree of the Rio Grande Valley. You don't have to look very far to see palm trees. But did you know many of those trees are not native to the Rio Grande Valley? Cameron County Historical Commissioner Jean Fernandez gives us a history lesson on palms in this week's Throwback Thursday.
Brenda, we're going to talk about a subject today that's very dear to Valleyites. We're talking about palm trees. What would the valley be without palm trees? But that's a trick question because it's very deceptive to think that what you see behind me was what the early explorers saw when they first came to the valley. The first palm trees that were seen by the early Spanish explorers, they were a species of palm called the Sable mexicana, or Sable texana. It's a sable palm. And the way it happened was 1519, when Pineda came around the Gulf of Mexico exploring the lands that were here. He found what was called the Rio de los Palmas. And there's a confusion because some people think that it was the Panuco River in Veracruz or the Rio Grande. But nonetheless, there was a huge forest of palms that was down on the delta, and that was what we now call, a remnant of it is called the Sable Palm Sanctuary, and those are the original palms. The transformation came after the coming of the railroad. With that original palm here, that had its own little enclave, but the colonizers that came in wanted to see a romantic vision. Bear in mind that the only corridor that was here of green followed the river. It was a ribbon of life that was here that was made up of various scrub brush and some trees, not very many. When the great land boom took place after the coming of the railroad in the teens going on to the 20s on both sides of the First World War, that's when the developers really started looking at the landscape and saying, hey, this is too bleak. There's not enough romance here. We want to make it a tropical terrain, so we're going to bring in palm trees. Where did they get the palm trees? They got them from Southern California. The species of palm that you see behind me here is actually resident from the coast of Sonora and Baja California. It's called Washingtonian Robusta. They were brought in by truckloads, literally thousands of them, and they dotted the streets and the roads that were here in the valley in the early days. There was another palm that was brought in that was so beautiful, and it's no longer here, and that was the Canary Island date palm. That particular palm had a crown on it, and you could see all these beautiful clusters of dates coming through, and it satisfied the romantic image that our original developers wanted for this part of the country. Unfortunately, there was a blight that took place on the Canary Island date palm and several other species, and it killed them all off. The Second World War was another turning point in terms of the botanicals that were brought into the Rio Grande Valley. Those particular soldiers that went off to the Pacific Theater in particular saw these palms and they saw the romantic image thereof, and they wanted to bring this to our part of the country. So the nursery growers brought in all of these other species. The spot of land that I'm standing on right now was a hotel back. It developed from the 1958 period on up into about 5 years ago. The developers brought in literally 100 or more different species of palms. This was a lush tropical garden, and some of the palms remain here today. All of this went into making the land that we live in today. It was a canvas that we used a paintbrush in order to make even more beautiful than it actually was in the very beginning. It became our home, and the rest is history. For KVEO News, I'm Eugene Fernandez.